Happy Monday and good afternoon to you. Josh is Severe Weather. I'm a meteorologist in the Raleigh area, and we do have severe weather ongoing in the southern plains, but I am focused right now on newly forming tropical storm Rafael, which is going to be approaching Jamaica overnight tonight and then strengthening as it heads towards the Cayman Islands and Cuba, likely as a hurricane. After that, we are going to be watching it very closely here across the Gulf of Mexico, as a rare November storm in the Gulf is certainly looking possible at this point. So we're going to break that down here. I'd love to talk about the severe weather in this video, but I really want to kind of respect people's time and just talk about tropics for the time being here. Although my thoughts and prayers are with everybody in Oklahoma that have been affected by tornadoes, and unfortunately more of that today. So the National Hurricane Center recently updated this to a tropical depression. It's likely already a tropical storm based on aircraft data coming in here in the middle of Monday afternoon. And we are likely to see the storm strengthening steadily here as it gets closer to Cuba over very warm water. After that, it will get to a point where the wind shear will pick up and the water temperatures will cool down and drier air will get into the system. So as quickly as it'll strengthen, it will likely weaken some, but it is still expected to have some impacts here on the Gulf Coast by the end of the week and especially this upcoming weekend. In particular, I'm looking at Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Western Florida, but this could still shift a little bit. Beyond that, we are not finished for the month of November. I'm not going to say that this is completely unusual. We still do get storms in November, but it is an active period compared to what we might be used to here in November. But we've got a modeling indicating another system could try to gradually spin up here nearer to the north of Puerto Rico, heading towards the Bahamas this weekend and into early next week. And there may even be additional development beyond that that we could at least take a quick look at. So this is the official Hurricane Center forecast. We do have what's left of Patty heading towards Portugal. I'm not going to speak much about that. We do have an area that has a 20% chance of development. And as of 1 o'clock, Tropical Depression 18, but likely now with what the aircraft are showing, this is probably Tropical Storm Rafael, and we'll get that upgrade by 4 o'clock Eastern Time. Here's a look at the infrared across the Atlantic Basin, and you can see this is our growing system here just south of Jamaica, heading to the north-northwest, and we'll be approaching Jamaica after midnight tonight with tropical storm force winds and heavy rainfall. And still a very broad system at this point, but it is beginning to get some better organization near the center, and that's usually the framework for an intensification phase here. Beyond that, we do have a flare-up of showers and storms here in this area along a tail of our front. The first one is not developed here near the Bahamas and Cuba, but the second one in this area, we do need to keep an eye on. In addition, some tropical moisture that will head westward here into the Caribbean Sea, but nothing's going to happen quickly out of this. Beyond that, this is the remaining portion of Tropical Storm Patty. Remember, it was subtropical yesterday and then upgraded to tropical storm all the way out in the eastern Atlantic, and then a few hours later killed off, basically. So very bizarre, but you know that occasionally does happen from time to time. Here's a closer look at the southwestern Atlantic and the Caribbean, and you can see here this is likely Rafael here, and this is the island of Jamaica, so it is going to be making its nearest approach just after midnight. Conditions are favorable for gradual intensification. This is not going to rapidly become a hurricane during the night tonight, at least due to the upper level environment being a little bit unfavorable for that. We do have this upper level trough in here, and as a result, there is somewhat of a southwesterly flow up and over this system, so that is limiting the western side of the storm from strengthening. Now, it is going to be pulling away in this general direction, so the amount of wind shear should drop off a little bit and provide a more favorable environment for some strengthening here by the time the system gets into this area west of Jamaica and approaches the Cayman Islands tomorrow. After that, I think it's going to be at its peak somewhere in this area, and the stronger it gets, obviously, the more we need to keep an eye on things across the Florida Keys. But I will say this. There's a ton of dry air up in here, so it's going to be fighting a good fight by the time it gets past Cuba and enters the Gulf of Mexico. Unlike Hurricane Milton and unlike Hurricane Helene, the waters are cooling down significantly and the dry air is increasing, and the environment becomes quite a bit less favorable over time once it gets north of 25 north. So this system is going to be at its peak in the Caribbean, a lot less likely that that could happen in the Gulf. Here's a quick look at the Caribbean and the central Atlantic here. Several areas that are flared up, but nothing showing any organization due to this very fast flow here out of the west and southwest. and that's going to keep things at bay for the time being. But this is, I'm not going to say it's not normal. I know other people are out there, trying to capitalize on that, but it is more active than maybe what we're used to, but not unheard of in November during the right tropical phase here of the Madden-Julian Oscillation. And water temperatures still remain very warm. You can see here that water temperatures over the central and eastern Caribbean remain at or above 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Even in the southern Gulf, we've got this little bit of an eddy here where water temperatures remain at or above 85 Fahrenheit. So they're still pretty warm, but they are cooling down this time of the year. This supports more storms here in the right environment, certainly with these kind of water temperatures. But as we see things moving up into this portion of the Gulf, things definitely get less and less favorable as we get a lot cooler closer to land. This is the Madden-Julian Oscillation. What this shows is where the rising air is across the globe. There's a pulse that crosses the equator. It takes 1 to 2 months to do so. And it's now in a very favorable phase here, phase 8, and actually heading into an even more favorable phase here, 1 and 2, as we get to about the 10th or so of the month of November. So this is going to keep that rising air over the Caribbean and over the Western Atlantic right on into the middle of the month of November. So we may not be finished after Rafael. Let's start talking about the S and T storms later on as we head into these phases here. By the time we get closer to Thanksgiving, I do think we're moving past that point, and we may be shutting things down pretty much altogether across the tropics. But over the next couple of weeks, we still have the possibility of seeing a few more storms. All right, here's a closer look right now at future Rafael, and beginning to become more organized over the center here, better thunderstorm development here. And a lot of this heavy rain is likely to come into the eastern portion of Jamaica, including Kingston here. So this heavy rain will spread northward through the evening. The worst will come overnight tonight when flooding will be a possibility. And it's not just this band we need to be concerned with. There are additional bands of heavy rain hitting Haiti and some of the mountainous areas in here where flooding will certainly be a possibility. And we just have to watch and see how this organizes. If you look at the viz here, you can see a pretty distinct twisting now in the cloud pattern here. We didn't have this yesterday, but we do have it today now that things are coming together pretty much exactly how our models said they would. I'm going to pause this and go back one just because the latest image isn't loading. Sorry about that flickering there, but you can see there's definitely more of a core here. Now things are beginning to become what Levi calls from Tropical Tidbits co-located, where the upper level center and the low level center are basically coming into alignment. And that's what starts to begin that intensification phase when that happens. You can see here the twisting on this side, the twisting on this side, but there is some dry air on the western side here. That is keeping this from growing and maturing into a hurricane for the time being. Now, as we move beyond tonight into tomorrow morning, this wind shear, this dry air here is going to back away, and that's going to give us the opportunity to see some strengthening. Hurricane hunters were in the system this morning. The pressures weren't exactly that low, 1,006 millibars this morning. You can see all of the tropical storm force winds, 40 to 45 miles per hour, were well to the east of the center, and near the center, nothing really more than 15 to 20 miles per hour. That was the morning flight, and you can see the data here from that. But the afternoon flight has shown the pressure dropping more substantially, down to 997 millibars, which is on the cusp of tropical storm strength. The other thing I wanted to point out to you is that the aircraft are finding a lot higher winds closer to the center than they were earlier. The winds haven't come up a ton, but closer to the center, we are starting to see some of those tropical storm force winds showing up here. Some of these are getting close to 40 miles per hour. So the pressure falls first, then the strengthening of the winds catches up to it. And right now, the strongest winds we see are in the northeastern portion of the storm, where they're reaching about 40 or so miles per hour at flight level, or at least at surface level. And you can see that here from the aircraft data. We have seen wind speeds over 40 miles per hour, and we're starting to see that pressure dropping quite a bit here with each pass that goes through the center. So it is beginning to strengthen, but the one thing that's going to hold it back here is the wind shear. Here's a look at that, and you can see here's the wind shear southwest to northeast across western Cuba. Now, over time, that area of strong wind shear out of the south comes around and becomes more southeasterly. So the storm is actually moving in the same direction as the upper level flow, which allows it to strengthen. It also goes over very warm water. So instead of having those winds in its face, it now has the winds kind of at its back, allowing it to strengthen. So that's an important point. I think people talk about wind shear all the time on here, and they don't understand exactly how it works, but it can work in the favor of the system. Now, what you are going to see here is just incredibly strong winds out of the southwest across the southern United States here. But then there's some weakness here in those strong winds, and then another piece here from this trough of some stronger winds. And these winds are reaching 50 or so knots, which is about 55, 60 miles per hour. But the storm stays south of all that trouble, at least through Wednesday into Thursday morning. Beyond that, here it comes into the north central Gulf of Mexico, west of Florida. This is not going to be a direct strike on Florida, I don't think. But take a look at this. We now start to see faster winds getting into the western side of the storm. That will allow it to start to weaken here Thursday night and Friday morning. And as the storm comes northward, it's not going to completely get killed by the wind shear, but it is going to weaken. Probably a lower end tropical storm if this model is correct. And right now we are seeing a better agreement in most of the models except for the European, but all the other models, the tropical models, showing it coming up towards the mouth of the Mississippi. And after that, we do see potential impacts all the way into Alabama, western Florida, and southeast Louisiana. It's not a big coastline here. They all kind of wrap around each other. So nothing like what we saw back in September with the Florida storms or October. This is going to be a much different animal here. Over time, you see more wind shear digging down into the northern Gulf next week. That keeps things at bay across the Gulf. But farther south, we do have some less wind shear across the Caribbean. It's not zero, but it is lower. So we have the opportunity for more organization. But I will tell you this, looking at this wind shear on the models, I don't think we're going to see anything rapidly blowing up quickly in the Caribbean. These are going to be slowly evolving systems that are going to be on the struggle bus the entire time, which is a good thing. It's difficult for somebody like me to try to predict, but a good thing in that we don't see things very quickly blowing up. So this is the official cone from the Hurricane Center from this afternoon, expecting it to be a tropical storm before tonight. We have a tropical storm warning for all of Jamaica. The storm is going to be approaching the Cayman Islands late in the day tomorrow, where a hurricane warning is in effect. The official forecast keeps it a tropical storm, but it's getting close to that point, thus the hurricane warning. And I would not be shocked if this continues to consolidate here, if it is a hurricane by tomorrow evening as it moves right over the Caymans. Then we head into Wednesday morning. It will probably be getting to its strongest point near the Isle of Youth. We have a hurricane watch for all of western Cuba, tropical storm watch for all of central Cuba. And right now, pretty good agreement that this is not going to be heading directly towards Florida. It may come close, though, to the western Keys, or the lower Keys, and the dry Tortugas if it follows the eastern part of this. That nearest approach is going to be Wednesday night and Thursday morning, but you can see the system is actually bending away a little bit at this point. And as it gets past 26 north, it should begin to weaken. It may weaken more quickly here over the early part of the weekend. The Hurricane Center does not have this making landfall in the U.S., but I think if you interpolate this or extrapolate this, you'll see that it's somewhere in this general area is where it would take the system, that is, provided it can still survive the wind shear. Rainfall totals here, we're looking at up to 8 inches across the southern and eastern portion of Jamaica, at least 5 to 6 inches possible here near the Cayman Islands, several inches in Cuba as well. This hatched area shows lower confidence here, in that these amounts could change based on where the exact track goes, but I wouldn't be shocked to see another foot of rain for somebody here, but the official forecast keeps it below that amount. Here's a look at our spaghetti plots here, and you will see really three general ideas here, and I'm taking kind of the middle approach at this point, but the UK Met, some of these global models here that don't capture how strong the system is, drifted off to the west over the western tip of Cuba and keep it in the southwestern part of Mexico. That is an outlying solution. We also have a couple that turn it to the right and up towards western Florida, and that is a possibility at this point. But generally speaking, the clustering is in this area, Louisiana over to about Pensacola or so. And there's actually a pretty strong agreement on some of our tropical models here that this comes in near Mobile Bay, but also passes close enough to the mouth of the Mississippi River to where there could be a tropical storm watch at some point over southeast Louisiana, coastal Mississippi and Alabama, and maybe even western parts of Florida. But this is an encouraging sign for this portion of Florida that's been beat up so much. It does not look like it's going to be heading in this direction. I think at the very worst, we have to keep an eye on it in the Keys, depending on how strong it gets. But you will see here, there's going to be an area of high pressure that allows us to bend back in this direction. There's also going to be a trough, though, that comes in this direction. And this model keeps it south of the trough so it doesn't get picked up. These models show it interacting with the trough. These show the trough coming in a little bit quicker. So those are the three scenarios at this point. You can see it says Tropical Storm 18. The Tropical Tidbits site already has this as a tropical storm. So it probably is at this point. And I'll check at the end of the video here, but I've got to move on. So our strongest intensities are, generally speaking, in this area and here over the southeastern Gulf of Mexico. But it's possible that could happen sooner over the area near Cuba. This is the ensembles from the Canadian. So this is the GFS ensembles, mostly going into the northern Gulf. There's nothing that takes this really farther west towards Texas, maybe Louisiana, maybe it falls apart at the coast. But generally speaking, central Gulf to maybe eastern Gulf, according to the Canadian. Intensity forecast, this is something we have to keep a closer eye on. Now, we're not seeing any models showing this getting all the way up to major hurricane strength at this point, but that is still a very slim chance of that happening. What we do see, though, that the models are beginning to pick up on some rapid intensification. I think they might be a little aggressive, but at this time tomorrow, we could be talking about a hurricane that is approaching the Cayman Islands. Beyond that, we're going to have to wait and see. There's going to be some wind shear. We're going to have some interaction with Cuba. So Category 2 is certainly a possibility, but we until the storm really gets itself together and gets a core, which is starting to happen, these models are going to have some flaws to them. Okay, we've seen that several times this season. So let's take a look at the environment surrounding this. This is the GFS model here that was run at midday. You can see the system's going to come by just south and west of Jamaica here at around 7 and 8 o'clock in the morning Atlantic Standard Time. It is strengthening, though. The pressure drops into the 980s by the end of the day as it approaches the Cayman Islands here. This is Grand Cayman, so this would be closer to Little Cayman here around 7 o'clock Atlantic Standard Time. At this point, it's probably a hurricane. You can see the environment is moist and the system is tightening up here. This is tomorrow night and still strengthening as it approaches the Cuban coast Wednesday morning. After landfall, it weakens a little bit, but then there's a slight re-intensification possible as that pressure starts to drop again here Wednesday afternoon and evening. But then you can see here these lighter colors to the west indicate drier air waiting for it. There's also cooler water, so the storm is going to be a lot more lopsided with all the moisture on the Florida side and all the dry air on the Louisiana side here Thursday morning. We continue to see some slow weakening. It's not weakening very quickly, but the structure is shifting, and you can see all the action here on the eastern side here. It's a lopsided mullet with Florida getting all the rain and Louisiana getting the dry air blowing us offshore. This is Friday. It's still weakening. It's a tropical storm and weakening more. And then as we get to Saturday morning, late Friday night, Saturday morning, moving through the mouth of the Mississippi, heading up towards Mississippi on Saturday morning. And then it actually turns a bit to the right here. This is just one model run, so we don't want to give it all the credit here, but it is definitely being supported by other models as well. The tropical models, here's the HWRF showing that strengthening tonight here, passing by just west of Jamaica here early in the day tomorrow, deepening and approaching hurricane intensity as it comes up on Little Cayman here tomorrow afternoon and evening. At this point, just shy of hurricane intensity, but still strengthening and growing after it moves past the Caymans. And this is a stronger looking system here, a high-end Category 1 tomorrow night, and probably a Category 2 moving by just east of the Isle of Youth. It continues to kind of go right into that area where the water temperatures are at their warmest, but it will reach a point where it stops strengthening as it moves across Cuba. It may try to reorganize a little bit longer here, and, you know, it could still be a Category 1 or 2 at this point Thursday morning. Now the wind shear starting to pick up. You can see how it's becoming more and more lopsided, less to the southwest, more to the northeast. But this is still a hurricane west of Florida here as we get into Thursday night. It's still a hurricane Friday morning. Look at that. But it is getting a lot of wind shear with it. Now, beyond that, you can see the pressure comes up 969 up to 971, then 981. And it is now, at this point, probably a tropical storm by Friday evening before it gets close enough to Louisiana. So I can't envision the Louisiana coast going under hurricane warning at this point. I think tropical storm warning at the worst. But you can see here, this is a little farther west, maybe tracking towards Lafourche and Terrebonne parishes on Saturday afternoon, but it is a lot weaker. This is a much less of an issue we really need to be too stressed about. I'll show you the halves models. They can get a little too aggressive on intensification, but You can see the HAVS A does not show that intensification until it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. It's actually keeping it at bay, which I don't necessarily think is correct, but it does have strengthening over the Central Gulf on Thursday night, and then quick weakening during the day Friday. And this is just a weak tropical storm Saturday, curling near the mouth and heading up towards Orange Beach and Gulf Shores by Saturday evening. Here's the HAVS B. This one's more aggressive. It may be too aggressive, but we'll see. Here it goes right between Grand Cayman and Little Cayman tomorrow evening, strengthening, and then 9:49. This I'm not going to buy. It's a small storm, but I don't think it's going to just rapidly intensify down to Category 3 at that point. That would be pretty extreme. But Category 2 may be a possibility at this point. You can see, look at that. It deepens so quickly that it just has nowhere to go but back up on the pressure. And at this point, a Category 1 coming out of Cuba Wednesday afternoon, and then a little bit more strengthening, a little tightening of the eye wall Thursday morning, and then we start to see that weakening trend Thursday night, Friday morning. And this is coming right up to the east of Grand Isle into Plaquemines Parish. And this landfall is a little bit earlier than the other models. It has it early in the day on Saturday. So that part's still quite a bit uncertain. But my gut feeling is that Saturday's the day that this could come on shore eventually, but it will be quite a bit weaker. By the way, this model, take a look at some of these wind speeds here. We see gusts of 30 to 40 miles per hour near Kingston, 40 to 50 on the southwest coast of Jamaica. It's possible they could get stronger, but this model keeps that center mainly just off the coast of Jamaica, which is a good thing. It does strengthen, though. Take a look at this. Wind speeds of 50 to 60 miles per hour here over the sister islands. It does keep the strongest winds, though, east of Georgetown and Grand Cayman. You can see over time here, though, take a look at some of these wind gusts here, approaching 60 to 70, maybe 80 miles per hour, offshore as much as 113 miles per hour. So it's a strong system, but looking at the Florida Keys, we could see tropical storm conditions here Wednesday afternoon and Wednesday night. We could even see a couple of tornadoes coming through from waterspouts, but generally speaking, the stronger wind field does stay just west of Florida, which is great news here. We may get some gusts close to tropical storm force on the west coast of Florida Wednesday night, but I don't think this is going to be a majorly impactful event at this point. As we head into Thursday, it's still a strong system, but by the time we get to Friday, take a look at how quickly things are weakening. And at this point, Plaquemines Parish may have tropical storm force winds Friday night, Saturday morning, but farther up to the Mississippi and Alabama and Florida Gulf Coast, we are barely getting tropical storm force wind. There's some possibility Saturday morning that could happen, but this is still 6 days away, 5 to 6 days away, and it could still change some. After that, it's going to weaken pretty significantly inland, by the way. All right, so that is a look at Rafael. Here's a look at Patty. I promised I wouldn't say anything, but she got to be tropical. Now we're heading towards Portugal and across Spain. But at this point, not a whole lot of thunderstorm development. All right, let's take a look at what's going to happen after these systems. We're not finished. Okay, we've got another area we've got to watch here. And as we move this into this week, you can see pretty good agreement. This goes into the central and eastern Gulf here. Here's the next system, north of Puerto Rico here by Thursday night. We've got several models indicating some slow development, nothing too strong, and then a track towards the Turks and Caicos and the southeastern Bahamas on Friday, and maybe something that tries to get up to Cuba or even South Florida here on Sunday. So while we have one system coming into potentially Louisiana, Mississippi, we may have another weaker system heading for the Florida Keys early in the weekend, but I don't think it's going to be strong. Notice all these reds in here indicating more areas to watch. There's a feature that might head this way. There's maybe an area that we need to watch again, and then there's another area here. So I'm not going to say this is normal, but this is pretty active for November. We need to definitely keep an eye on this, and there's more potential down the road here. You can see the oranges indicating even later next week some more tropical potential. So we're not done this week just yet. I have a feeling I'll be doing videos right on up to almost Thanksgiving at this point, but yeah, this is it's way too soon to make any calls on. Just something to keep an eye on here in the future. Here's the European ensemble. You can see Rafael. Here's the next system coming up to the north of Hispaniola, maybe close to the Turks and Caicos Friday night and Saturday. But this particular run takes it. This particular model takes everything west into Cuba and then kills it by the weekend. So that may not be too bad. But you can see we have lowering pressures again in the Southwest Caribbean. It's kind of like a rinse and repeat situation here. And the Canadian ensemble. Here we go, heading to the Northern Gulf. The next one here, you can see The Canadian keeps the southern piece together and actually develops that, not the northern piece so much, and may actually have something moving by Jamaica into the Western Caribbean by this time next week. I really hope that's wrong, and it probably is, but we still need to watch it at this point. So you can see the Canadian gets super frisky here. It even says something might be in the neighborhood of Florida here next weekend. But again, wow, that's it's more than we like to see this time of the year. Here's a look at the operational models real quick. Here's the GFS. Just going to show you the track here of our system. Here's the next one. The GFS actually brings it through on the Caribbean side of Hispaniola on Friday. And then whatever's left comes up towards northern Cuba. And at this point, not really a developed system, but that moisture does head into Florida. Florida's going to get pretty wet here tomorrow into Wednesday. Then we get a break late in the week, and then this next surge comes through here over the weekend. So we are going to get some more rain here before it all clears out. And we do have to watch the Caribbean again. Nothing too scary, but I have seen some model runs of the GFS, which looked a little bit worse. And we're not going to bring those up and scare folks unnecessarily. Here's the Canadian. And you can see it's got that rain coming up into Florida and Georgia here Wednesday into Thursday. Some moisture also moving into the Carolinas as well. The Canadian keeps this system weak and keeps it up towards Panama City as a lingering depression on Friday, so it does look different. But it is developing our next feature here near the Turks and Caicos on Friday, and then takes that into the northwestern Bahamas and even approaches the Treasure Coast of Florida on Sunday. So this is probably a tropical depression at the worst. It's nothing major, but you will see again, we may have the birth of another system next week across the southwestern or western Caribbean, and that, of course, is to be determined. Finally, the European AI. This is Rafael right here, bringing it up to the Louisiana, Mississippi coast on Saturday. Here's the next one. Not looking super impressive, not really developing it, but it is there. It's bringing moisture into South Florida on Sunday. And then we watch the Western Caribbean. At this point, the AI doesn't show development, but we do need to keep an eye on that. So this is our track here, and I think this is a tropical storm. I don't know why they haven't updated it, called it one yet, but anyway, this is the track. You see the bend, and then it's probably going to get bent back to the right at some point here. We do have an invest here in the Eastern Pacific. This is actually heading eastward and may make its way to the Gulf of Tehuantepec. More rain coming for Central America. That's not what they want. But our bigger problem is going to be in the Western Pacific. We have a new typhoon here, Yinzing. Mars is the Philippine name, and it's up to 80 miles per hour. And it is right now on track to just clip the northern portion of the Philippines. Fortunately, staying just south of Taiwan this time. A couple days ago, that looked like a more reasonable possibility. Now it's not, going right over Cagayan, and then the remains are going to head towards South China and Vietnam again, unfortunately. Here's a look at our typhoon here. Pretty well defined, starting to take aim here at the Philippines. Here's where our models take the system right through the chute here. And here is the European guidance, and you can see there's still a possibility that this could make a hit on northern portions of Luzon in the Philippines. After that, a weaker system heading west-southwest towards Vietnam or towards Hainan again. This will be about the fourth or fifth system to affect this part of the globe. But believe it or not, the Western Pacific has been below average on total accumulated cyclone energy, whereas the Atlantic has been much above average. As a whole, the globe is actually having a slower than average year, but the Atlantic has a lot of imbalance in that. We've had a lot more on this side than on that side. So I hope everybody has a wonderful day, and Election Day is tomorrow. Go out and vote. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you did enjoy this video, I'd appreciate it if you could share with your friends and become a subscriber. I thank you for your time today, and I give all the honor and glory to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. God is amazing, and he is working at all of us, no matter what you personally believe. And Paul tells the church of Rome, Romans 8:27-28, and he who searches our hearts knows the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for God's people in accordance with the will of God. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. God loves everybody who loves him, and God loves everybody else for that matter. But we know that the good in God comes through for those who choose to believe. And I just challenge you to continue to pray, no matter who gets elected here tomorrow or beyond. Just pray for humanity, but pray for each other, and continue to understand that even though there's a lot of evil out there, there's still a wonderful God who's out there working through it, and that light is there through Jesus Christ. You can certainly see the light at the end of the tunnel if you choose to believe, despite all of the negative, all of the darkness, everything else that's going on. And I just wanted to share that word of encouragement with you because I know it is very easy to be discouraged. It's very easy to see nothing but bad things going on, but we've seen how God has brought people together in the face of natural disasters. People are rushing to the aid of those that were hit by Helene, and down in Florida in Milton. It may not happen on our time, but it is happening on God's time. And that is a wonderful thing to see. And I encourage you to continue to pray for those folks. So I will be back on tomorrow. I hope you all have a wonderful day. God bless.